the seventh day. They say God rested. But God didn't rest.
Right, so we've just been given a peek into what Metro Last Light is all about. And you mentioned before we started even showing the game that it's kind of a difficult game to sort of show off, because if you got 10-15 minutes and you show off one aspect of the game, you really can't really say that this is what the game is, because it's a broader thing than that.
Yeah, we think of Metro Last Light as a story-driven adventure. I guess by genre it's a first-person shooter. It's all told in first person. There's a lot of shooting in it. But we mix a lot of different game styles in there. So we have intense combat, we have very stealth-driven combat if you choose to take it. We have these station cities that you can explore. We have scripted moments, cinematic moments, areas where you're alone on the surface and you're exploring, survival horror themes. So lots of different gameplay styles that combine. And we've always struggled to try and encapsulate what Metro is in the confines of, say, a 15-minute E3 presentation. We've only ever been able to show you one slice, so this time we try to show you a bit more variety of the gameplay.
So I think the first game got its sort of recognition for the atmosphere and the sort of the world that sort of have been built for this, and I think you're sort of expanding on that. Can you tell us a little bit about what's gone into sort of building that atmosphere and that sort of society underground that's there?
Well, first of all, we have some incredible source material to draw on. We work very closely with Dimitri again. He was the author of the original book. If anything, we've probably worked even closer this time round. He's written the story, the plot line for this game, specifically for the game, and we've gone back and forth and adapted it and built the game around it. We've explored a lot more of Artyom and his character and his story, take the player to different locations within the game world, new station cities, maybe some places that you wouldn't expect. So we have this incredibly rich world, and for us the game is all about this sense of exploration, immersion into an incredible world that's full of detail, layers of detail at every turn. Everything needs to tell some kind of story, whether it's environmental detail or whether it's the characters that you listen to and overhear. Most of their dialogue is all written by Dimitri as well, and some of it are excerpts from pieces of his work. So I guess all of these things can combine to kind of create the atmosphere, as well as all of the visuals that we layer on the top, of course.
So I got to see Venice is one of the city states, or one of the stations, I should say. And what kind of flavor does those brings, and why are they important for the sort of experience that the player has?
Well, there's a real commitment to this realism, I guess, within the game world. But realism doesn't just extend to mechanical realism. We have that in the way that the weapons are constructed and put together, but we're also trying to convey a sense of, I guess, social realism at the same time. This Metro it holds what's left of humanity. You have these warring factions, independent stations trying to survive in this new world. It's inspired from the original book, this allegory for contemporary Russian politics as Dimitri saw it, and this pessimistic message that when you've got 20,000 people left in the world, rather than band together, they're all just going to turn on each other and fight. So these stations are a window into that world, that society. You see how people are organising themselves, how they're feeding themselves, all the day-to-day minute detail of their lives, which just probably doesn't get touched on by many other game worlds, where the world is just an environment or a playground to aid gameplay. For us, it's a window into the actual game world itself. But from a mechanical perspective, they're really important, because for most of the time you're either running scared for your life, or trying to fend off hordes of mutants, or stealthily pick your way through some kind of human encampment. So they offer you a little bit of downtime where you can relax, and then also upgrade your weapons, buy new weapons. So they have lots of purposes within the game and the fiction.
So a game like this could easily sort of have a sort of depressing look, and visuals that sort of get you down. It's all grey, all brown, all sort of, kind of dreary. But what we saw last in this demo was a kind of an interesting sort of different visual style, and I also felt that Venice also brought a lot of sort of color, a lot of richness to it. So you haven't really, how would you say that the sort of the idea is here, sort of you want to convey the breakdown of society, but you still don't want to sort of put too much depression on the player, right?
Yeah, I think Metro 2033 was certainly a bleak game. It's an accusation often levelled at post-apocalyptic games that they can be grey and brown. I think we show with the first one that we can get beyond grey and brown. We use lots of different lighting effects to add colour and variety to the levels, but that extended more to our interior levels, and I think just generally Metro 2033 had a very bleak and sombre tone throughout it. We kind of get bored of just doing the same thing over and over again, so it was a conscious decision to expand the palette and the colours that we use. So we've done that in some of the station environments that we've chosen. So Venice with its its strip club and its bar and its hanging lights from the ceiling, just give a much richer, colourful interior to explore. Whilst outside, through the introduction of dynamic weather, we've moved the storyline on, so you now see the sun breaking through the clouds from time to time. That allows us to use day-night cycles. We have dramatic lightning and weather effects in some scenes. It means we have much more varied outdoor environments as well, and just a much richer range of colours and textures that we can apply across the game. I wouldn't want anyone to think that this is a cheerful game, though by any means. We still want to preserve that loneliness, that bleakness, and you'll find plenty of examples of that in the game still.
And we've touched on some of the subjects, but there's also parts of the game that are a little bit more scripted, a little bit more sort of focused on this sort of survival horror aspect of it. And can you touch on any of that?
Well, we like scripted elements. We like linearity in some levels. We don't think that's a bad word by any means. It allows us to deliver unique experiences to the player, and every element of Metro, the player experience, is meticulously stitched together, and the use of some scripted moments really helps us deliver moments that you can't in maybe a more emergent game. At the same time, we've tried to expand on this idea of player choice, which you certainly had in Metro 2033, but typically we now have larger levels, more expansive levels with different routes that you can take through. And what we showed you today was kind of two different examples of that. One in a human combat environment where in the demo I showed you, we went through very stealthily. You can actually complete that level without killing anyone, without even being detected, or you can play it like a more conventional shooter and go in guns blazing. A lot of that will depend on the weapons that you have at your disposal and how you've advanced and progressed your character throughout the game. And then in the swamp level, again, very broad, non-linear level. There are multiple routes that you can pick your way through. You can complete the objectives in various orders before you get to your ultimate goal within that. So we use a lot of different gameplay styles and techniques within the game, whether it's scripted and linear in some areas to more expansive and emergent in others. So I think variety is really the key.
And speaking of that variety, you briefly touched on how the weapons have changed, and I think that is something that is really going to allow the player to sort of cater to their own, sort of customize their own play style a little bit more than they perhaps were able to in the past.
Yeah, we don't really like to force a particular play style on the player. I think it's true to say that the stealthy approach is normally more effective, simply because it allows you to take down enemies one by one. You can conserve your ammunition more effectively. But to do that, you need an arsenal of silenced weapons, throwing knives, etc. And invariably, you're going to get caught in a gunfight at some point. And there'll be some players that prefer that kind of approach in the first place. So we now allow you to completely customize each weapon that you have in your arsenal. We give you 3 primary weapon slots as well as a range of secondaries. Unlike the first game where we force you to carry one of each class, so a pistol, an automatic, and a special weapon, you can now mix and match. So you can, if you want, carry 3 of the special weapons, although the ammunition is generally more expensive and rarer. So again, you have to bear that in mind when you kit out your arsenal. You can have everything silenced. You can have nothing silenced. You can customize. You can turn a pistol into a like long-range sniper rifle by fitting it with an extended barrel and a scope, or you can turn what might initially seem like a long-range weapon into a more effective close-quarters weapon, depending on what you do with it. So there's lots of scope for the player to experiment.
Recently, you confirmed that there will be no multiplayer, and I think that's it's sort of a brave thing for a developer to sort of say, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to focus on something, on this part of the game, and we're going to put that out, because players tend to sort of say, we want it all, we want everything. But could you go into some detail on why you made that decision, and sort of what it means for the development team to be able to focus on the single player?
So it's a big topic, right? For a very small studio, we're only about 50 during the development of Metro 2033, up to about 80 now for Metro Last Light. They're an extraordinarily passionate studio, and they want to try and do everything. And early in the project, a lot of them are multiplayer gamers. They had some great ideas, some early prototypes around multiplayer, and we had a small team working on some of these prototypes. And to be honest, I think it looked really, really interesting. I'd love to be able to show or share it in some form further down the line. We don't know exactly what we're doing with it yet, but there came to a point where we had to decide whether it was going to be worth our while trying to expand on these prototypes and build it into a fully fledged mode, because there's no point just sticking on a half-baked multiplayer mode onto the game. You either do it properly, or you have to wonder if it's really worth doing it. We thought our resources would be best spent by stopping that progress and moving those guys back onto the single player experience. And THQ have been really supportive of the decision, which is great. And the response we've got from the community when we announced that was, I think, overwhelmingly positive. So I think
not a lot of people have been seeing the multiplayer, so it wasn't like, oh no, we're not getting that, because we didn't really know much about it other than there was some sort of multiplayer.
Yeah, and we're going to keep that under wraps for a little while longer. Like I say, we don't like throwing work away. It might surface in some form or other, whether it's for this project or another project. We'll have to wait and see.
Exciting. When is Metro Last Light now scheduled to come out?
We're set for release in early 2013. Not going to be more specific than that at the moment. We have a date in mind.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.